it's time for another episode of the Thought Project. And today I am dressed for summer. Summer. And we're going to start with a little bit of Pump Up the Volume.
Pump up the volume. Pump up the volume. Pump up the volume. Pump up the volume.
That's enough of this song for today. We're going to move on into the show. So thank you so much for joining me. And the subscriber numbers have been going up. The show, overall, the channel that I've created around it has hit 4,000 hits over the weekend. So it's something to kind of celebrate. And I need to also thank you to NYX. It's just a small collaboration. They sent me this. It's a free sample. So I actually happen to be a big fan of their products. I don't use them all the time, but they are one of my favorites. So anyways, so that was this product that they sent me. So it's a little collaboration for today. Anyways, and I just want to remind all of you that I'm looking for subscribers, so please subscribe to the channel. Don't just watch, subscribe. And additionally, we're going to start economics today, but nothing's really changed that much with the U.S. economy. We already did like 2 episodes. By we, I mean you and I. We've been through 2 episodes of the issues with China and economics and the BRIC conference. That's Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and the business they do with both Russia and China. So we can talk more about that and how that implicates and what it means sort of later in the show. But right now we're going to move on to something kind of fun, which is I'm going to go and talk about beer again. Bud Light lost its position as the #1 beer in the country. And that's commercial, like general beer, like not craft beer. And what happened was that there were some bizarre articles put out, which I know may have been hacked or placed or paid for whatever for a beer that nobody really knows or even drinks, interestingly. And the actual #1 beer in the U.S. now is Guinness. And it's been known that it was for a while. It's always been up there as #2 in the country, or #1 or #3, depending on the year and time of year. But it's an Irish lager. It's considered a stout. It was once used as a meal replacement. You're probably thinking, why does Guinness have such a strong hold? And like, why do ciders that are very popular in Ireland have such a strong hold in the U.S. economy as far as what people drink when they're not drinking like wine or hard alcohol? And the answer is really simple: St. Patrick's Day in Irish culture. Irish culture. Because everybody celebrates St. Patrick's Day. So a lot of people buy a Guinness for St. Patrick's Day. Yep. Now, I'm sure you're going to ask, Deborah, does this have some other implication in economics? Sure, because we talked a lot about craft beers being the most popular, actually, more than any of these others. So let's talk about craft beers. The top craft beers in the U.S. are Schoderhofer, Watermelon Mint, which is some kind of strange. That's a really strange Americanized version, but that's a really odd craft beer name, and it's definitely an Americanized craft beer. Like, it's a bizarre German smash up with the U.S. culture. So that's the number one craft beer, if I even said that right. And then you have Fisher Walker Parabolite Barrel Aged Salted Caramel Stout, if I could even say the names of these. So very interesting, hard to pronounce names. I don't drink any of them because I'm allergic to wheat. You know, I'm a cider girl. And I like the seltzers too. So, and those are up there in the top 10 as well, actually, when you get back into the the regular beer categories. So, the number 3 is Deschutes Tropical Fresh IPA. Number 4 is Roquefort Triple Extra. 5, Speedway Stout Mexican Dark Chocolate Sea Salt and Mexican Coffee. Okay then. 6 is Dissident Peach. 7 is Sapporo Pure. I love Sapporo. I'm sorry I can't drink it anymore, but I love Sapporo. It's Japanese. Fantastic if you can get a hold of it, really. 8 is 10 Barrel Brewing Company Real Good Summer Ale. 9 is McKellar Game of Thrones Iron Anniversary IPA. Number 10 is Guinness for Nitro Cold Brew Coffee Beer. So as you can see, this, Guinness comes back around because it's even in the top 10 of the craft beers, right? And then if you're looking at this from an investment angle and you're worried about where to invest your money, this is not hard. This is really easy. You want a solid investment? I've named it for you. Now that I've given you something, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and subscribe to my channel or ask someone else to subscribe. Thank you very much. Now, number 11 is Monday Night Brewing Taco Tuesday. 12 is Flying Embers Chocolate Irish Stout. So, those are your top craft beers. That's the top 12. And I just want to point all of this out because it's kind of important to know what people's buying habits are if you're doing any investing. I have no money for investing. I've been wiped out too many times, right? But if I did, that's what I'd be doing. If I was going to invest in some kind of product like that. The other thing I'm noticing is that there's a thing with frillies and strings on bathing suits. So Martha Stewart was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She had the frills going, that up and down frill like that, And then I actually bought a suit. It's kind of strange when I get stuff like that. I'm like, you're not supposed to be in the thrift store. You belong in a designer store, and you're only $8. But I bought a suit for $8 that literally had really cute frills on it. I've been wearing it all over the place in social media. People love it. I've been using it for OnlyFans. It has little frills around the collar. And then I just noticed that Tori Amos did a concert recently where she put on a big dress with the same kind of frills. So whatever's going on, those up and down frills are the thing right now. I don't know if you want to call that a clothing investment or if you want to invest in those lines. Probably when it comes to clothes, you should have invested before the frills actually hit, whatever lines were running those, because that's how that works. You need to be ahead of the trend. But, so those are some kind of fun economics items to do before we go into the rest of the show. And we do have to go into some stuff that's a little bit less fun. But, I just want to talk a little bit more about, because I alluded to this before, here's the thing. When I was at Luther College, I showed up there. I was a young woman, very attractive. I even showed the pictures of what I looked like at the time for all agents, and they were all completely freaked out. I can sing, and I can write my own music. Now, the school decided to go ahead and let a guy be assigned to me as a voice teacher who was the head of their opera and theater, and he told me my voice was terrible, that I sounded awful. He didn't want me singing like Whitney Houston or any of these other singers. He took a bunch of recordings of me on his Mac computer, and then he gave them to a woman who had been living with me. She lived with me for 2 semesters. She worked for the Russian government. She was a nasty little short thing, and I can call her that because she had people beat up and raped on the campus, and she used to masturbate in public. And she's a felon. And he gave her recordings of my voice to use and let her sing into the operas of the school and pretended she was the lead. And he thought it was really funny. He thought it was really funny to be abusive to me, tell me I couldn't sing, and then I should give it up. He actually told me to quit singing for the rest of my life. And there were like 30-40% of the students on the campus really didn't like what was going on. A lot of them were going to being victims of trafficking themselves. But, they gave me some advice. They said, well, you put it euphemistically, they said he didn't have good pedagogy. So I did end up with a good voice teacher eventually who was nice to me and respected me and valued my voice. She also literally cried for me because she knew what was going on. And I think she actually took off from the school and never came back to teach there again. So in everything, there's always been people around who want to give a helping hand, who risk themselves for me. And I just, the fact that when I graduated, because of Kendrick and his dumb behavior and his stupid agency, I had $500,000 stolen from me, and he directly gave it to Cersei and Wilhelm, and he said they had to be paid because they were Russian, and he was Russian. Everything was about being Russian, and this woman who'd been my roommate was allowed to have my voice to use and to perform, even though she was a short little ugly little thing that was mean and gross and had bad hygiene. She was allowed to sing with a synthetic voice on stage, or quote unquote lip sync on stage, because she worked for Russia. That's disgusting. That's not a school. That's a Nazi camp, And it's important to understand all this because there were people actually murdered on the campus, not just beaten up and raped and stolen from. And I had all this material I brought with me that was also stolen as well. And one of the ways I got it stopped was that the FBI actually went ahead and said, this thing of them stealing, because I was abused and a lot of the material I wrote up, I wouldn't have even shared in some cases, like, that they wanted. Because they wanted the stuff that I wrote up when I'd been feeling bad that was just therapeutic. Well, that's disgusting. And that's why some people argue that they were just trying to create demons. Or, secular people would say it was just psychopathy. A need to want to disgust people. Because that's what the performer they created off of some of the material is. She's really disgusting and grosses people out. And also not very popular. So the thing about all of it is that, that was my personal material and based on my life, and I actually didn't want to share it. And the songs I did want to produce and share were much happier and uplifting. And I just think, it's disgusting that I'm still today never gotten any kind of justice or restitution. I never got my money back. Kendrick had taken the money that my father had given me when I was a kid because Cersei had gotten it and then given it to him for this agency. The agency is still in operation, and it's an agency completely operating off of stolen money and abuse and labor trafficking and telling people to work for free. And, part of the reason I was able to even get some of the labor trafficking stopped was because I was able to make a case for the fact that I was literally being abused. And I was able to point out all these other people who had actually been hurt and murdered. There were a bunch of women murdered in Arlington. By the way, the Arlington police were less than useless. I hope they're better today. I hope Luther College is better today because it was terrible under President Torgerson and Ann Higham. They allowed Sandra Peters to act out. They allowed Jackie Wilkie to act out. They allowed Kendrick to come to the school and act out. That's an alias name I've given him. They allowed Patricia to work on the staff and steal from people and abuse students. They allowed Dan to work on the staff and abuse students. They allowed Buffalo Bill to work on the staff and abuse people and do these setups. By the way, there's an ongoing investigation into the murder of my mother because my mom lost her ability to speak and I was being abused and I couldn't do what I needed to protect her. And she had problems with the cops in Florida. And this network of Russian terrorists basically were able to have her murdered as part of their desire to steal. How is that acceptable? It's not. And it's not acceptable for these people to be free in the U.S. It's really not acceptable for anybody working in the federal government as an employer and appointee to try to continue to support any of these companies. So that's what's going on. That's why they're being so hard on anyone coming up for appointments. And that's why all the federal employees are being asked to be more responsible and actually do their jobs. So you have to understand all this because it's real in its life. Like, there's no reason for me to be a poor person. And actually, one of the biggest arguments for Luther being completely disrespected as a musical school was the fact that I had such a good voice. That I was, at the time, I was so young and perfectly pretty. And people might say, well, you're still really attractive today. Yeah, but that doesn't change what they did. Because their argument was that they wanted people who sounded really good and were really pretty. But instead, they were putting forward people who were Russian. And that's been the problem with this agency, Consistently Hollywood. Consistently putting forward people who were Russian or Albanian who worked for the Russian government. It's ethnocentrism, it's a type of racism, and it's not acceptable. And labor trafficking people. And the organ sales. Like Kendrick even told me, and this is where it gets really strange, I actually have been to the Chinese Man Theater out in Hollywood because I was taken there against my will. Kendrick tried to pretend that he actually was like dating me. And, I went there with him for one of his premieres, and I ended up embarrassing in public and told him he was evil and a slave trafficker. I was just going to do whatever I had to get people's attention and get back home because I had been taken there forcibly and got back to Arlington, by my own force of will, basically. And it was because some of the people in the federal government actually did care, and some of the friends I had did care and wanted me returned home in one piece. And that was probably one of the scariest weekends of my life. But at least I got to say that to him. I do remember running into a Russian woman who actually works for the Kremlin who was like, you blew it. You're supposed to, try to land him. What? No. I don't have time for men that mean. Someone who steals people's money, and, he later told me that he had people from the Russian mafia signed up in the media. Some of them kind of looked like me, but he was going to have them out there in the media and working, and, had already started their careers, and it was all because their families had money just to pay him, and he really didn't have any idea what he was doing. And even ran drugs to fund the company. And that's not a company. That's a shell organization where they have to steal all the material and they're deliberately abusing and hurting decent performers. That's people you can't trust because they're not producing real material. And it matters in the sense that, when I look back, people say, what happened to Whitney Houston? How did she become a drug addict? Whitney Houston was abused to death because she really could sing and she was pretty. And to this day, I still look back with a certain amount of trepidation and just, when I remember a moment at the Grammy Awards, because the Grammy Awards has been going downhill since the 2000s. There's no point in watching the Grammy Awards or the Academy Awards. Pretty much everything is stolen. All the people that are put forward are buying their way in. It's just forget it. Forget the shows. Forget it. Just don't bother. Find something else. And that's really what most American viewers have done. So that's why the numbers are going down. Because we all know that these people are criminals, that they bought their way in, that they're stealing material. It's all just fake. It's not worth anyone's time anymore. And I remember in the early 2000s, though, there's a scene where J-Lo gets on stage, and she's got her hat on, and Whitney and Mariah Carey are sitting right next to each other in, the 4th or 5th row, and they're just looking around everybody do you see this? Do you see this? And they're smiling, and I thought, oh, no, they shouldn't have done that, because J-Lo has people like Buffalo Bill working for her, so them even doing that much on TV, looking around what is this thing doing on stage that doesn't sing? And she lip syncs and steals people's voices, and she's really mean, and she says she's KGB. Why is she even here? No, it's not worth your time. And that's actually why I wouldn't even bother to attend either of those award shows. Because I couldn't help it myself if I was there. I'd be like, what is she doing here? Ha ha. I want to do the same thing. So I just wouldn't go. Because it's too dangerous. Because you're going to be punished for that, right? Because these people are mean. They're nasty. So, just to make sure you know that. So that's what's happening right now. And I think, as far as the U.S. economy, here's the thing. Think about where you're going as far as festivals and all that, because things really aren't too good right now, and the level of public shootings, everything is up with festivals. Decorah has one. I'm never going to tell anybody to go to Decorah. Decorah was supposed to be a small town in Iowa. That's where Luther College is, and it was the kind of place where I never went anywhere alone at night. I always took someone with me, comparably to the D.C. area, where I constantly went places alone at night if I felt comfortable, but I knew which places to go to and how. Whereas with Decorah, with the amount of violence and danger there, in a small village, basically, it was not safe for me to go anywhere alone at night. I always had to take somebody with me. And, whereas the D.C. area, you could totally go places alone at night, and you'd be okay. That's the difference. And I said, was I just paranoid or nuts? I talked about this with a number of people working in the federal government, HHS, in the earlier days, and other agencies said, no, you're totally right. It's a dangerous place. And if you're going out there for their festivals, you better be careful. Because Patricia, Buffalo Bill, and Dan all go back there a lot, and so does Kendrick. So you're taking a risk. Taking a big risk. Most of us would avoid going to Los Angeles these days, probably D.C., but Decorah was not actually safer. So, got to know your zones, got to know your areas, And that's how it was living around D.C. There were certain parts you just wouldn't go at night at all. That's why I'm staying. I could go a lot of places in the D.C. metro area at night and knew I was okay. Some places it wouldn't. It's kind of how crime works. The economics of crime, dear. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm going to try to keep these shorter because some of them have gone too long. And I'm going to sing Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. Oh, no. Do you think I should sing it in the Hello Kitty hat? No. I want you to be able to see my face. Never mind. If I think of you every step of the way. And my darling, bittersweet memory. That is all I'm taking with me. So goodbye. Please don't cry. We both know I'm not what you need. And I will always love you. Will always love you. And I hope life treats you kind. And I hope you have all you dreamed of. And I wish to you joy and happiness. But above all this, I wish you love. And I will always love you. Will always love you. I will always love you. I will always love you. Darling, I love you. Oh, I'll always love you. And that's the thought project, just so you know, for today. Thank you.